Hey, good morning, folks. We're on John chapter 18 today, and this, as you think of John being written, they think John was the last of the four Gospels written. So it doesn't include a lot of things the other ones have, but, John is certainly laying the groundwork for his readers on how did this happen? How did Jesus, the Son of God, how did he get crucified? So he's, talks about going out to this garden, and Judas brings the soldiers and they arrest him. Peter is another main character in the book of John, and I'm not certain, I don't want to question John's motives, but it seems perhaps is there some jealousy issues with Peter? They would have been very, very close, but, he's making clear that everyone knows about Peter's denial. Everybody knows about Peter cutting off the ear of the priest's servant, and it's just, I just find it pretty fascinating. And who's this other disciple that comes with Peter? And it says that in verse 15, that disciple was known to the high priest. He entered with Jesus into the courtyard, but Peter stays outside. I'm wondering if that is John talking about himself. We just don't know. But Jesus is arrested and is brought before Annas, the father-in-law of Caiaphas, who was the high priest that year. Annas was probably a former priest, I imagine, and Peter, his first denial happens in verses 15 through 18, and then Annas questions Jesus, and Jesus says, "Hey, I've spoken openly. I've not hidden. If you have questions, ask people who've heard me speak." And Jesus is struck by one of the officers, and Annas then sends him on to Caiaphas, the high priest. So there's a process that to have somebody crucified that has to occur, and John is laying it clear that this process is going on. So Jesus went to Annas, and now he's going to before Caiaphas, the high priest, and then next Jesus goes before Pilate. So we have then in verses 25 and through 27, the other two times where Peter denies Jesus, saying, "I am not," and again he denied it, and the rooster crows, which is fulfillment of Jesus's comment on the Last Supper, that you will deny me 3 times before the rooster crows. And Jesus appears to Caiaphas, and Caiaphas sends him on to Pilate. So Caiaphas would have been a Jewish, the high priest, a Jewish leader, and now Jesus is before Pilate, a Roman leader. And Pilate says, "Take him yourselves and judge him by your own law." He says he's not done anything against Rome. And the Jews say it's not lawful for us to put anyone to death. So they can't crucify Jesus, but the Romans can. So Pilate interrogates Jesus more. "Are you the king of the Jews?" Jesus says, "My kingdom is not of this earth. My kingdom is elsewhere." So Pilate says, "So you are a king." And but eventually Pilate finds no guilt. He says, "I find no guilt in him." But there's this custom that they can release one man for the Passover. "So do you want me to release the king of the Jews?" And they say, "No, not this man, release Barabbas." So they decide to release a criminal instead of Jesus. Which brings us to the end of this chapter. And tomorrow, with John chapter 19, we see that Jesus is delivered to be crucified, and in fact will be crucified. The details shared in that chapter. So Have a great day. Just John is just sharing details of the last days of Jesus's life, his arrest, and how this happened. And as you're a reader of John's gospel in the early church, they think several years, maybe 30 or 40 years after the crucifixion, and some would be thinking, how did this happen? How was Jesus, this man of God, this guy who performed all these miracles, how did this happen? And John is laying out the details of what occurred. So have a great day, and we will see you on here tomorrow. God bless.